Hello and welcome to Fly With Your Shadow, the podcast all about music, mental health and illness, and the mess that the COVID pandemic has made of all of it. I'm Jeff Robson, and this show comes to you from my home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This show offers me the opportunity to have in-depth conversations with some of my favorite musicians and some really interesting people. It's also giving me the opportunity to share with you just how common mental illnesses are. The thing about a mental illness is that they're so often well hidden behind the face of someone who on the surface appears to be full of life and energy, but behind the scenes might be suffering in silence. Today's guest is just one of those people. He's someone who seems to be always on the go and always busy, and if you ever have the pleasure of seeing him on stage, he's the life of the party and an electrifying performer. It turns out, though, that he's also been through his share of tragedy and loss and difficulties and is dealing with it all with a bipolar disorder.
I'm Matt Masters, a Calgary country singer and the co-founder of Curbside Concerts.
I think most people outside of Calgary probably know Matt Masters best for his role in Barney Bentall's Cariboo Express. Barney Bentall, of course, is a longtime songwriter and singer and performer here in Canada with a number of big hits to his credit. Anyone who's seen that show knows that it's one of the most entertaining nights of music out there. Basically, it's an all-star lineup of great performers stepping in front of a red-hot band for an old-time style review. Performers cycle on and off stage, and it always ends up in a big group finale. Throughout the show, Matt Masters is not only one of those songwriters, but he plays the role of a host and MC, telling jokes, introducing songs and performers, and dropping the names of local sponsors into some really amusing advertisements. On that busy stage, he more than capably holds his own alongside can rock legend Barney Bentall, his son Dustin Bentall, Ridley Bent, Leroy Stagger, who was our guest on episode number 1, and a whole host of other great special guests. But that's just an occasional sideline kind of job. Whether on his own or with his band, the Ladies and Gentlemen of the Rodeo, he's busy year-round, even though it's been a decade since his last album, All Western Winners. He's honed a really fun show built around a classic country honky-tonk sound. Offstage and behind the scenes, though, he's had a heck of a difficult time over the years, dealing with loss, dramatic health scares, and difficulties that would cause even the strongest among us to feel some anxiety and depression. It all culminated with him being diagnosed with a bipolar disorder and learning to deal with that. In spite of all the hard times and, the subsequent devastating blow of the COVID pandemic, Matt Masters was able to reinvent himself in an admirable fashion, founding Curbside Concerts and building a brand new model of bringing live music right to people's homes and neighborhoods. That business started in his home of Calgary, where he lives, but he quickly expanded all the way between Ontario and BC in Canada, and they have sites on further national expansion. That business started in Calgary, where he lives, but has quickly expanded all the way between Ontario and BC here in Canada. They've set their sights on further national expansion and are even looking to move into Australia and other parts of the world. As busy as all that's kept him, Matt Masters finally found time to put out a new album. It's a collection of some of his favorite songs by other writers called Everybody Loves a Winner. It was produced by Leroy Stagger. It was recently released on his 45th birthday on March 23rd. This album sees him embrace a new soulful sound where he's singing a lot better than ever before, and he's backed up by a Memphis-style horn section. The album also features guest duets with Jill Barber and Barney Bentall, and features songs by Ian Tyson, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and many others. I managed to find time to catch up with Matt over Zoom from his home in Calgary. Once again, the sound isn't perfect in spots, unfortunately, but I think you'll be able to understand and enjoy this conversation. And he loves that damned old rodeo more than he loves me. Someday soon, going with him someday soon. We haven't seen you here in Winnipeg for quite a while, and you haven't released a record in quite a while. So before the pandemic, And forgive me for being ignorant on this point, but how much was music even your livelihood at that point before things shut down?
It's been my livelihood steady for 20 years. I've made my income fully from music. Yeah, well, I mean, 2004 was when I know 2000, I guess 1 was the last time I had a non-music job. So, yeah, so for 20 years, my income's primarily come from performance, and even up to and into the pandemic, I did 170 gigs last year or something like that. I'm the one guy who's not stopped gigging, so. Before the pandemic, I was gigging weekly with my band at the King Eddie, like a historic music venue in Calgary. We're the house band there on Friday afternoons. So we do a 2-hour show there each week since 2018, I guess. And that would be a 4-piece or sometimes 6-piece country band doing my songs and some country classics and, fiddle and pedal steel and all that good stuff. And then other than that, I was also working as a DJ. So for the last 2 years, I was working daily at CKUA out of Calgary, hosting the afternoon show. And then I was also doing a little bit of club DJing, doing like some like pub kind of not real like dance venues, more like a pub DJ. And I would do some Sunday morning DJing at a brewery during their brunch. So I was spending a lot of time as a DJ, to be honest. And then but 1 gig every Friday afternoon, and then I would have on average 1 or 2 other gigs each week, as either Matt Masters solo or Matt Masters and the ladies and gentlemen of the Rodeo, as we were widely known.
And somehow you still found time to run for politics and all kind. You've done all kinds of interesting things over the past few years. So you've been a busy guy.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I have, as you mentioned, I ran in the 2015 federal election here in Calgary. I was the NDP candidate who ran head to head against Stephen Harper. So that was an interesting experience. But I've also worked in a few other capacities. I spent a year and a half working with the National Music Centre in Calgary as the program leader of the Alberta Music Cities Initiative. I spent some time running a festival in Calgary called the Spaghetti Western Festival, and I did some bookings for venues like Winos and a historic house called the Lougheed House. I also spent some time working inside the City of Calgary Arts and Culture Division, helping to rewrite the busking bylaw back in 2015. And, and then, like I say, getting into radio after that. So like, I've always been one to work in music. I mean, I operate a jam space, so I run a 3-room rehearsal space where most of Calgary's heavy metal bands practice. Done that for almost a decade too. And, that's working in music. You gotta gig, and then you got to do the other stuff that kind of supports the gig. And that's been my thing.
And somehow you've managed to have 3 kids and a beautiful wife and sleep once in a while, hopefully as well.
Well, it is a busy place. That there's no doubt about that. And the last years as a dad have transitioned me from being a nighttime person to being a morning person, and that transition is real, because like I spent a solid 10, 12 years in the clubs and on the scene, on the road even. And, so the transition to being like a full-time dad is, a serious one. But luckily for me, I've been able to, make it work.
So obviously you were a busy guy. So what happened when everything shut down? Like you had all these different things on the go. What kind of an effect did that have on you? So with 3 little kids, my wife and I, our income comes from live music performance, like almost exclusively. My wife is also a musician and was doing some work as a music teacher. So our income was pretty much gone on the St. Patrick's Day weekend last year. And I still had my radio job, so I was still doing that, but that was only a part-time job. And so it wasn't going to be enough to pay our mortgage or anything like that. And so we had, our savings weren't exactly hefty. So we had about a month to kind of make it happen, And so Amanda, my wife, and I came up with this idea for what we called curbside concerts. And we registered the company name under our existing business and then set about to kind of make a wing and a prayer effort to, save our performing lives and our income. And so the idea behind the curbside concert
Well, essentially, it's like someone pulls up to your front door with a portable battery-powered speaker and does a gig for you from the side of the road. And you sit on your front step at a safe distance and you enjoy music because sound travels. You don't have to get close. You can sit in the back row of the concert and still hear it. So just imagine there's a venue between you and the performer, and and that's kind of how it works. So like, because the thing about the industry shutting down is it hasn't changed how many songs I know. It hasn't changed my ability to play music. That has not changed. And my job is playing music. So my job hasn't actually changed. It's just the place where that I traditionally sell my wares is gone, right? The theaters and the venues where I've worked for 20 years are not open. And so I'm like, all I'm in need of is a new place to sell my wares. I'm confident in my show. People hear me sing and they're like, I want to hear some more. But where am I going to get the people? And so what I realized was, we could do these curbside concerts and we could work safely because we're at a distance. We could work locally because people should stay home. And then we could make enough money to stay alive. That was the goal. And it's totally worked,
So did this idea really just come this sounds like a business that would have been like planned for a year before it was launched. Like it really just came that quickly. And where did it come from? Like, is this coming from doing house concerts or?
Well, I mean, the real motivation came from two places. I was reading a book about the Yukon Gold Rush, and it occurred to me how the people who made money in the gold rush were not the miners, but they were the suppliers, right? So sell a shovel, and sell 1,000 of them. Try to dig for gold with the shovel you bought. Well, maybe you'll get some, maybe you won't. And so, like, if you want to make money in music, and that was my ambition. I've worked in music 20 years. I'm not looking to change my industries and get into groceries or something. So I had to figure out, how do I provide my thing? And then the other thing was, there was a photographer here in Calgary, a guy named Neil Zeller, who was doing some really cool stuff just around the time he started doing these distanced portraits. He called them portraits, and he'd take a telephoto lens, drive around the city, take pictures of people, and then email to them. And he'd accept a donation, And we got connected. We knew each other on social media. We both know, he's a friend of my sister's, so we got connected. And when I saw him doing that, I was like, well, sound travels just like telephoto lens travels, And then I looked in my garage and I was like, well, I got this speaker, and if I rent this unit, and if I plug that in over here, I can just be on it. And then I discovered there was some really good rentable mobile technology, at Long and McQuaid and stuff. And so, so I just I came downstairs to this very desk where I'm sitting right here with my head in my hands, like, what the heck am I going to do? And I was thinking about Neil's portraits. And then I was just like, I acknowledged that the word curbside it's part of the lexicon in a post-COVID environment in a way that it wasn't before. And so I just plugged in and I bought a bunch of websites, curbsideconcerts.ca being the first one. And then after that, I own a bunch of websites, curbsideyoga.com, curbsidepilates.com, author, curbside movies, because truly what we've discovered here, the shift in the music industry, usually when we have major shifts in the music industry, they're technological, right? The invention of a new CD or MP3 or whatever. But in this situation, we're having a shift in the music industry, which is environmental, right? It's different. It's not the same thing. And it's not, what it's done is it's revealed new opportunities because people are more inclined to listen because they're tapped out of being online. They have nowhere else to go. And so the idea of maybe sitting quietly in your yard and listening to music that your neighbors booked, and you're like, well, I don't usually listen to this type of music, but got nothing else to do. And then lo and behold, you discover it's music you love, that's what we tapped into. And so just to give a frame of reference, at 11 months old, Curbside Concerts has performed closing in on 600 gigs nationally. We got close to 100 booked for the 2021 season already. Our ambition's nothing less than 5,000 gigs nationally. And we have producers working in Toronto, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. So we've got a real company with a real payroll, and and we have over 70 artists on our roster, and we're just about to launch a new Vancouver roster and a revamped Toronto roster. So I'm confident we'll be over 100 artists working through Curbside concerts before we hit 1 year old.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been an incredible ride.
And did it come together fairly easily, or did you have to do some tweaking of the systems? Like, did you test all this stuff out yourself by doing the first shows and then go from there?
Definitely. I mean, the vision at first was just get me to work. It wasn't get anyone else to work. It was just like, get to work, Matt. And so what happened for the very first booking, actually, I told my brother about this. I was like, hey, I got this new website called curbsideconcert.ca. I'd never built a website before either, So I built a website, and I was just a picture of me and my guitar, standing in front of my house with my kids and my wife at a distance sitting on the front step, And our 8-year-old took the picture, My wife was on the step with the little boys, and my girl, she stood on my, I was kneeling to, anyways. We had a photograph that kind of explained what you were going to get, We opened up the basic social media accounts. And then I told my brother, and then he told a friend of his that night. And then that friend of his happens to live in my neighborhood. We both live in Glendale. His name's Tom, and Tom just sent me a note. He's like, hey, I'll book one of these. Let's do one. Let's do one tomorrow. He's like, I've got a handful of good friends in my neighborhood. There's a park across the street. We're all the kind of people who will distance naturally because they were all proactively healthy and safe. And so like that, the first one was booked. And so I just got on the horn with some friends in the Calgary media. And the Global TV, I think it was, or maybe CTV showed up to that first gig. And then we were able to get TV coverage on my first 4 gigs. So I had 4 gigs in the next 4 days, and I had TV at each of them. And then we had a CBC interview, I had a CBC interview, and then I booked 100 gigs in the next 4 days. Like the phone rang off the hook. Like I've never seen that in 20 years of booking, Like I booked 100 gigs for myself in 4 days. It was just like, boom. And then right away I realized though that like I was going to miss gigs. There's no way I could play this many gigs. So I turned to my bandmates who were we'd all been kind of canceled, So, and like, our fiddler, Jeremy Genu, he's got kids. He's a working musician who had suddenly had no income either. So I was like, Jeremy, Curbside concerts, And so he started doing his, and his show was like instrumental. It's all fiddle, And then another fellow in our band named Pete, Howlin' Pete Cormier is the name of his band. And he's a rockabilly singer who played piano in my band, but could tell, he has his own show. So he jumped up with his partner, Sydney, and they started doing shows. So suddenly we had a roster of artists like before we even started. And then, instantly we started to realize that there was opportunities outside of Calgary, So we started trying to figure out who we could work with in Toronto, who we could work with in Winnipeg, and every musician in the country's out of work, so let's find a way to put people back to work. And then, then the course of the year has been a process of learning about safety, because everything starts and ends with safety. And the whole thing is there's a bunch of myths that we're going to destroy. So the myths say, these are old standing music industry myths, that an artist can't work locally, right? You're going to crush your career if you work too many gigs locally. Artists can't earn a living wage. You're going to go on tour and come back broke. Artists can't have healthcare benefits. You just don't get them. And frankly, I don't accept any of that. And so what we've done is we've recognized that with the new environment that's brought in by COVID, with people's new willingness to participate and forced participation being at home, the opportunity to turn a street into a concert hall, like a cul-de-sac is the new concert hall. You put every family in the cul-de-sac on their front step, a full yard away from each other, and you put an artist 50 feet away in the middle of that cul-de-sac, you got 50 people sitting at a gig, and it's a different gig than before because it's not just the music lovers who buy tickets, because we're not selling tickets. It's everyone in the family. It's not just the music lover in the family. When I do my typical gigs at the King Eddie, my audience is exclusively made up of people who will come to a venue in the middle of the day. It's a free show, but you get what I mean? Music venue attendees are a select group of the general populace. Same with festival attendees. And as musicians, we've been trained to focus our marketing efforts on that group exclusively because they buy records and go to shows. And that's our market. If you don't do those things, well, you're not our market. But with a curbside concert, it's super different because you're having this thing where someone who's not a traditional music fan is having this real emotional connection with this community experience. And they come to the artist, or their feedback to us says, I haven't seen my neighbors in 6 months. There I was sitting across the street. I got to say hi to my old golfing buddy or whatever. Or I saw a neighbor I've never met before. I heard a sound I didn't know existed in my community. And these stories are awesome. And they're really empowering for the artists and for us as a team too. So we're really motivated to just get work from musicians and keep neighborhoods feeling good with the power of live music.
And so is it not even necessarily music fans booking these then? It's just people looking to hang out with their neighbors?
Jeff's birthday. Let's have a band. What can we do? We can't do anything. Let's have some music. It's I played a graduation last year. I talk about this one because I just turned 45. I don't play a lot of graduations from high school. Even when I was 18 and playing music, I wasn't playing a lot of I was playing for my parents' age people. So last year in the springtime, I got a booking it was from a dad, and his daughter was finishing high school, class of 2000. She and her girlfriends were going to party in the garage. These 10 girls who had nothing to do. And so he hired me. And so let's just be clear. I'm nothing newer than Willie Nelson in my playlist, And here I am with a dozen 17 and 18-year-olds. So I did my best to learn a Lizzo song and some Katy Perry. And these girls did their best to enjoy a 45-year-old bald dad singing to them. And we had a blast, because they just wanted to do something. And they didn't care if it was, me as opposed to the kind of music they would normally listen to. We played weddings. We've played so many anniversaries or retirement parties, birthday parties, all that stuff, because music is the thing. We played obviously Christmas parties, New Year's Eve. We did Halloween events, Thanksgiving gatherings around fires and stuff like that. The thing is, culture isn't accessible in the venues it was formerly accessible in. So if you want to access culture, you have to have it delivered to you a la carte. And that's what Curbside Concerts is. It's the artist you want at the time you want. And it's awesome, it turns out. So it's going really well.
And does this have a life post-pandemic? Is this something you can see doing for the rest of your life now?
Totally. Because it turns out having your favorite artist at your house with your friends over is really awesome. It used to be 60 years ago, if you wanted a pizza, you had to go to an Italian restaurant in the evening. And then someone realized after World War II that you could actually make one in the afternoon and drive it to someone's house. And pizza delivery is just not that old, but we think it's so ingrained, and similarly package delivery. And now through the pandemic, alcohol delivery has become stuff that's just normal, and so culture is the same way. Can't go to a museum, but you can hire a curator to come to your house because they're sitting at home doing nothing, and they'll give a speech to you for a certain fee about the topic of interest, DJs, dancers, we actually just booked our first Indigenous fancy dancer, fellow on our roster here in Calgary. His name is Craig Firstrider, world champion fancy dancer. And he just got his first gig. He's going to be dancing at a home in central Calgary. And the host is someone who booked a Curbside concert last summer, had a great time with her neighbors. And so this year she was looking at our updated roster, saw Craig on there and reached out, and she was like, what's the scoop? It's way different because as a dancer, he only does a shorter set. He's 10, 15 minutes, because it's so exhausting. But she's very excited, and I'm very excited too, just because let's get the dancers to work too. We're starting with the music, but all in good time.
Is there any concern about that music industry thing where you're are people still going to want to come to see you at the King Eddie? Are the people at the King Eddie going to be mad at you because you're making people get live music where they are? They don't have to come to them anymore. Does that kind of thing concern you?
No, not at all. The opposite, in fact, is because I'm out there telling everyone about the King Eddie. I literally tell way more people than I would be talking about otherwise. And they have a good time with my solo show. Wait till you see how a guitar solo sounds when I have my actual guitar player with me. The singer's taking the guitar solo, that it's a little bit iffy. So, I actually feel like the the work that the artists are doing is introducing music to a wider audience. And that wider audience will in turn realize they love live music and will in turn become activated as fans, as buyers of stuff. So I really think we'll be supporting venues in that long run. And the other thing is, like, a curbside concert is 45 minutes at the longest, because the truth is you are on the street. It's not mass mall. You know, like, there is magic about being in the Times Change that's different than being at the end of my driveway. You know, there's an intimacy and honesty and a purity to a curbside concert because it's an artist and an audience both sharing so closely. But you put your favorite act inside your favorite venue, and that's, you know, that with a crowd of people, that's a magical thing too, you know. So I think what we've done is identified a new marketplace for enjoying culture, but I think it's only going to support, you know, the other pieces of the industry as it grows, you know. And to that end, we're helping some musicians through a time when they might otherwise be abandoning their craft. You know, if you can make a couple $1,000 doing curbside concerts, which is totally achievable, you know, then maybe you can make it through the pandemic and get back to the time when you're better. That's it. Well, and the other side of it is, because a curbside concert is in its nature a private gig. You know, we don't advertise the locations because it's at home, you know, or maybe your place of business. But it means that the artist doesn't have to invest their social media capital in it. You know, the artist doesn't have to sound check. The artist doesn't have to tweet about it. The artist doesn't have to do, like, you know, a rider. They just know that they're going to get in their car, or you know, they can travel on their bicycle if they got the mode, get to the gig, which is going to be in their area. You know, we're not driving a Calgary artist to Winnipeg. That's just too far. And we're not, you know, like, we have distance policies. We want to keep people close to home. So the artist essentially sets out in the afternoon, sets up, does a gig, done in 40 minutes, has a great time, gets some gratuities, meets some new friends, sells some merchandise, and they're home before dinner. You know, and it's like, that's the thing. It's just going to work, you know. It isn't going on tour, and tour is separate, you know. And tour will come back. And this will be the thing you do when you're off season, you know. Tour all summer, then do a couple curbsides in the fall, maybe do a winter one if you're the outdoorsy type, you know, or, like, you know, record doesn't come out till March, or maybe your record comes out, say, in June, and you want to do some gigging in the advanced time that doesn't, you know, it's not your band, maybe it's not your, you know, it gives a working musician opportunities to work in different locations, you know? So it's going pretty well. It's exciting. I mean, and we even have, like, we're talking about Curbside Australia too already, because just the connections are there. And the difference in Australia, of course, is since they have a better handle on COVID, is there's not the natural demand for this. Like, COVID created the situation where this works, and now it makes sense here. We aren't quite there in Australia yet, because they're just going to festivals and having a great time.
So if people are interested in this, how do they book it, and how does it work? How much does this cost me to put on? How does that kind of stuff work?
For sure. So it's all getting pretty streamlined. It's all through curbsideconcerts.ca. That's the web portal we use. And through there, you just go and choose your location, choose your time, choose your artist. It's getting so automated. You just click your credit card and pay it, and you're done. All curbside concerts are $300, including plus taxes, pardon me. And 2/3 of that goes to the artist. That's our business model is every gig starts with 2/3 and all gratuities and merchandise sales to the artist. And then everything else that the company runs on that 1/3 that remains. So that's the set price across the board. All the artists are the same price. And yeah, I mean, you just go on, click where you want to do it. And, like, you know, we can usually turn around for the very next day. Like, I got an inquiry last Friday, did the gig on Saturday. Yeah, sure. I mean, I had my schedule open. It wasn't far, you know, and we had a great time. Yeah.
And through all this, you still have time to do your own shows and while you're running all this and stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, I did probably about 100, maybe 150 gigs last year. I was very top end heavy, you know, at the spring of last year when I was doing, you know, I think I did 40 in a week or something like that, you know. Well, it just was like I was doing 3 a day every day, you know. So I probably wasn't at 40. I was probably closer to 20. But got to get my math straight there. But yeah, I gigged really heavy last spring. And then in the summer, I started taking a bit more of a break. You know, I was starting to experience just like the weight of running a business as opposed to just running a band, which is my previous work experience. So yeah, and then just, we had some transitions in personnel and just some big learnings of what it means, then I got shingles in the fall. So I got super sick and it sucked. And it was actually the same night I was doing the Barney Bentall and the Cariboo Express band I've been with for 15 years. We were playing our Calgary, our one COVID date in Calgary with Corb Lund and Jim Cuddy as our guests. And rehearsal went great. And then the next day I was in the hospital on IV during the concert. So I totally missed that amazing gig. That was for sure my most exciting gig of the year last year. And I didn't get to do it. But, I was able to keep gigging and then I actually just decided to take all of the month of November off because I was just, kind of alluded to at the start. I deal with some mental health issues. And so for me, I was at a point where I just wasn't really operating as effectively as I knew I could. And so both my wife and my team at Curbside Concerts, we all agreed that it would be good if I kind of just took a step back for a month, So November was it was a quiet month for us anyways. And then we ramped up for a bigger December, but and then that was kind of the tail end of my 2020. And the start of this year, we've just been laying the groundwork, to make sure that we're really operating like a national company, that has a marketing budget and has a strategy, that's what we're doing. And it's really interesting. It's really exciting because I just feel the music that we're going to be producing. There are so many gigs that people are going to enjoy because of the work we're doing to make sure that we have safety guidelines in place and policies in place to protect the artists and all that important stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to hear more about the mental health issues if you're comfortable, and don't talk about anything you're not comfortable with. But I think it's really valuable for us to share these stories and for other people who might be struggling to know what it's like for other people to go through it as well. So anybody who's seen you live with the Cariboo or on your own, you're like Mr. Showman. You're like Mr. Positivity, Mr. Energy. You're the guy. You're wound up, but through all of this, you're having trouble. Is it what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, like many people, I have some external pressures that have been heavy on my life, So in the last 10 years, I went through a series of events that were pretty challenging, and just to tick them off one after the next. I'm a totally bald guy, but there was a time when I had a full head and face of hair, but all my hair fell out one day. It was October 15th, 2011. I was in a hotel room in Niagara Falls about to do a gig for Folk Ontario, and I got alopecia set in. So I lost all my hair one day. And that just kind of was the start of just some troubling stuff. I got celiac disease. Then I lost my dad. We kind of struggled through the Calgary floods of 2013, losing, we were out of our house for a couple of weeks. I got our car stolen, guy broke into our house and stole my computer and our phones and all the pictures of my dad's life, and then I had other health issues. I had a vocal cord surgery last summer. I had a polyp on my throat, so I couldn't talk for a month. So I'd been going through some things, right? And then what I didn't do was I didn't rest at all, because as you described, I keep a busy schedule because that's how you pay the bills in music. And also paying the bills in music and working weekends and working summer weekends, it means we don't go on holidays. Having a radio show 5 days a week and then gigging on weekends, I got a 4-year-old kid who's never seen a beach, but I live in the prairies in this COVID time. So what you gonna do, but one day. And so what happened was I dealing with the grief of my dad, lost my dad, and other things started kind of weighing on me. And I started just experiencing anxiety and depression at a different level than I'd ever had before. And started to, just to carry a weight that I wasn't familiar with. And so then this past year, just after I got over shingles, I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so it gave a bit of an explanation for why I'd had some of these crazy mood swings, why I'd sometimes be really angry. Other times I'd be really sad, and so, yeah, it's been a really confusing time because when you don't know what's up, and you just see these extreme emotions, it's very tricky to kind of categorize them or figure out why am I angry? crying when my family's happy and healthy. I'm on tour in front of an audience who loves me. We just had a great first act, but now I'm just crying my eyes out here before I go on and sing a really fun song. Like, what the heck? But it was just all these things, and so I started going to therapy and, just getting medicated a bit more. And that's been an up and down process too. Like, I've had a lot of challenges with therapy. It's not just all been like rosy with me. There's been some good therapists and some not as good therapists, and some good experiences and not as good experiences. But like, the journey I'm on has me in a pretty good spot right now, where I'm, like I've been pretty good for a couple months now. Like, I have bipolar disorder. Like, there's just no getting around that. Like, it's my constant. But knowing that I've had it now for 6 months, enables me to deal with myself differently, because I don't have to be mad at myself, or I don't have to feel ashamed of myself for a behavior I make, because now I understand, like, oh, I'm acting like I'm acting because I'm experiencing a downward swell, or I'm experiencing feelings of mania. And these things, you start to recognize them. And it's just like training yourself at an instrument, like when you start to recognize a thing, you can react. And so that might mean that maybe I should just go for a walk, or maybe I should just go sit in my office and breathe deep for a while, or maybe I should go play with the kids. To be honest, it's almost always the answer is go play with the kids. And if I can calm down and play with the kids, they're pure fun, right? They're pure fun and pure love. And those are the things that somebody struggling with depression, those are very strong uppers. You get a 4-year-old hugging you and telling you that your Lego's the coolest. And you're like, well, all right, then I must be an okay dad, And so, yeah, I mean, I have had a journey, but even when I was on radio at CKUA, I was happy to talk about mental health. It's something I noticed that, like, every time I interviewed somebody, every musician was talking about their mental health. Like, it was just without fail, whether it was part of their inspiration in writing, or whether it was part of their journey. Like, for me, people say, why didn't you make a record for 10 years? And well, you can't answer that question without talking about mental health. Like, I couldn't release my record, the one I've just released. I mean, we made it 3 years ago, but I couldn't release it because I wasn't in the headspace to do it. I couldn't handle all the work that had to go into it, so instead of kind of half-assing it, I shelved it a bit. Then I had a vocal cord surgery. Well, I can't do it this year. Okay, now that lost this year, and we'll do it next year. No, now we'll release it in March of 2020, and that's just how, so just records sometimes do that. But I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good. And it's, yeah, like, the success of Curbside obviously really helps me feel good. The success being that, like, in November, I knew I could take a month off work and be supported. And that to me is like, holy smokes, that's success right there. That's success in the music industry. I got turned down for a WCB claim, but my team was like, no, you need to rest so you can be on it for December and for the 2021. And so, that's the strategy we took, because our company is like, we have an opportunity to build a company that puts mental health at the forefront. And so when we do that, we give everyone on our team a chance to, like, just relax a little bit, because, like, they know they get some therapy paid for. They know that if they need a day off, they can have a day off with no questions asked, and like, yeah, I mean, for me, I see us in Curbside concerts. Like, I talked earlier about how we're busting some myths. Another thing we're doing is, like, we're defining a new space. The Curbside, it's a new space, and as we define it, if we can define it with like, equality and self-care and community at the forefront, if this is the example we lead by, then others see it and they'll be like, well, shit, we gotta be friendly, affordable, support our neighbors, be good, like, too, like, we can do this. It's like, it's just one small thing, but, like, we can do this. We can safely put musicians back to work, and like, I'm not there yet. I know I keep getting told not to talk about it, but I like to talk about it. I aspire to get to a point where our artists on our roster have healthcare benefits from our company. We're not there yet, but I would like to be there. And I think it is achievable. And it's something we're working towards, because, like, man, like, why shouldn't an artist be allowed to have dental? That's crazy. And if the economy we've designed says that's the rules, well, I just don't accept that economy, because I got teeth and my kids got teeth. And like, you can't tell me that my kids don't deserve dental just because I'm a musician. So I also recognize responsibility. No one else is going to build it except me, so it's up to me to build it. But luckily now we've got this wicked team at Curbside that's like, we're going to build this stuff together, Yeah.
One more thing I want to ask though about getting diagnosed bipolar. Like you're not a super young guy anymore. You've been around. I don't know what your experience with mental illness was before that. Like, was that a scary thing for you and your family to get that diagnosis, or was it just kind of a relief because now you knew?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of experience with mental health before. Like I started getting diagnosed with anxiety and depression about a year before, 2 years before. So I started getting some knowledge of mental health, though, but only in the last couple of years. Like only since 2019, sort of. It's a new conversation for me. In regards to the impact on my life, I guess it's maybe a bit weird, but so I have a bunch of autoimmune diseases, right? Like I have alopecia, I have celiac disease, and so there's been more than one time in my life where I've got a phone call from a doctor where they're like, hey, everything changes starting today. You're never having a beer again. You're never eating bread again. Those are big deals. But that was 12 years ago now. So like, whatever, I'm perfectly comfortable in my celiac diet. And knowing that I was a celiac stopped me from getting sick all the time. I spent my whole like 20s, 30s, just like, well, I got diagnosed celiac at 33, so like, but I spent my childhood sick. And then I just stopped eating the stuff I was sick, and now I'm not sick anymore, So like, it's different with bipolar, because like, I'll still have bipolar no matter what I do, as far as I know. I still don't know very much about it, but again, it gives me a framework. And now I can support myself by making better decisions. Like if I can see myself getting upset, find a way to calm down. Because, the next 2 days you might be, like, make sure you go to sleep tonight. Make sure I drink enough water tonight. Maybe don't have a second beer. Those sorts of decisions that I can make. Gluten-free beer, of course. But like, those are the kind of decisions I can make that support me. It's not really rocket science or anything, but it's just like totally stuff I didn't think of, like, how's my exercise schedule? How's my diet schedule? How's my sleep schedule? How is my play with the kids schedule? Have I talked to my mom recently enough? These are the things that like make me feel good. And when I feel good, I act good, and it's like, and then what triggers me? Man, you know what? Weirdly, off-leash dogs in an on-leash dog park is totally one of my triggers. I got little kids and I don't like them getting knocked over, and they've all been knocked over. But at the same time, like, since I've learned that is in fact a trigger that really stresses me out, I just learned to not worry about it. Because I was like, now I can see a dog, like, oh, well, just don't worry about it. Instead of just like being like, oh, what if they run over my kid? Oh, what if they come and bite me? Like, I just stopped worrying about it because I recognized what it was finally, And so it's such a weight off my shoulders to have to, yeah.
So having experience, turning things around in your life, I guess, made it a little bit easier for you to adjust to this change as well.
That's right. You must have heard the joke at the start of COVID, everything shut down and all the people were like, how are we going to survive? And all the artists were like, what, you've never like been super fucking broke before for your whole life? Here I am at 45, like I've been working full time in music since I was 24, and I'm just getting to a point of economic stability, and I've been a successful artist, not like mainstream successful, but I'm a working musician who pays my bills, pays my taxes, and like is raising my family on a musician's income, and that's like a choice I made it around 24. I wanted to be a working musician, and I recognized I was probably not going to be a rock star, like I wanted that too, but I was pretty excited about the idea of being a working musician. And so that's what I've targeted my career towards. And so here I am. That's meant some lean times, that's meant some really lean times. And so with the onset of the lean times in COVID, I felt like my wife and I actually adapted pretty well, just maybe because we were used to some degree of crisis and struggle, like with all the shit that's gone wrong in the last decade or so. I honestly felt like I just went from one crisis to the next, one time after like this summer, for example. Okay, mid-August, a speaker fell on my head. I got a concussion, it in my head, bleeding out in front of my kid, hospital in an ambulance. I get home 2 weeks later, I'm back in the same hospital, but now I've got fucking shingles. Like, what the hell? And then like come out of that, like, hey, you got bipolar disorder. I'm like, what a month. That was like in a month. And in the meantime, I'm like curbside concerts, like slinging all these gigs. Hey, let's have them. Hey, we got an investor. Okay, I'm ready to. Hey, let's talk about this media person. Oh, TV interview. And it's like I'm like holding a bloody rag on my head, trying not to bleed. At the same time, hopping on one foot, singing a song with a kid under my arm. It's just like headless chicken central over here. But that's actually literally the description of a successful music career. That's it. You're busy. You're working. And that's right now more than ever. I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had, and frankly the privileges that I have. Like the fact that I had a radio show across the whole province definitely helped my curbside launch. I had to leave the radio because I just didn't have time to do it every day because the curbside was taking up so much. But like, I'm been gifted with a lot of privilege. I've had my challenges, but I've been gifted with a lot of privilege, and I'm doing my best to use what I've got to support, my community, to be responsible for my neighbors and responsive to my neighborhood. And those are like the things I kind of live by.
And somehow through it all, you decided now was the time to release your record. What was that about? Because you said you've been sitting on this for a while. You're busier than ever, and now all of a sudden you want to.
I had some money in the bank. I could afford to press it.
Really? It's that simple.
Pretty much. Well, the other thing is now touring's off the map, right? Like now I don't have to worry about a release tour. This album has a 3-piece horn section. It's got a flute. My wife plays on the tune. We've got great backup. I sing a duet with Jill Barber, another one with Barney Bentall. There's a ton of great stuff on this record. So how was I going to tour it in the first place? My thought was I would do 1 or 2 marquee events, rather than trying to lug a 12-piece band around or something. And so with the onset of COVID, obviously any kind of touring is done. My tours are now just solo shows around Calgary. That's the release tour, so it's definitely a different thing. And really it just came down to that, we had enough budget to do it. I finally had the capacity to do it, which also meant hiring someone to help me with it. Cause I've realized now, that's, if you're really bad at something and you try it again and again, and you're still bad at it, like maybe hire a friend who's good at it. It's not, and so that's been another part of it. And then like my friends they're pressing it too. A couple guys named Ian here in Calgary, and it just like they were ready for it too. I was ready for them. It just all the things finally lined up, and they were like, let's release it on my birthday. Cause what the hell, there's no marketing logic, and it turns out if I'd been a little smarter, I probably would have released it in February because then I would have made the cut for the Calgary Music Awards for the last year. Instead, I'll be like, their cutoff was Feb 28th. And I just arbitrarily chose my birthday as a day to release it on because I didn't. Some things I worry about strategy on, some things I don't worry about. I'm just happy that it's out there. The fact that we get some play, it's a good record. And so I'm happy that people hear it.
Kiss me each morning for a million years. Hold me each evening by your side.
I'll have more of that chat, and he'll tell us more about his new album on the March 28th episode of my music show, Tell the Band to Go Home. You can find that show at tellthebandtogohome.com. You can find out more about Matt and get in touch with him through his website, mattmasters.ca. A few of his albums are on iTunes, and you can find links to those at flywithyourshadow.com. If you happen to live in Calgary and want to book Matt or want to book a different artist where you live, check out curbsideconcerts.ca. As always, I really hope you'll consider supporting Matt Masters and all the other artists we've heard from on this show. Whether it's by booking a curbside concert, buying a CD or download, or just sending in a donation, you can make a huge difference in a talented artist's life when they're unable to get out and do what they love and what pays the bills for them. This show, however, is free. All you need to do to support me and this show is to follow, subscribe, and if you would, please share an episode with a friend to help spread the word and get the show into new ears. That truly is the most challenging part of doing this show, so I could really use your help with that. You can get in touch with me at flywithyourshadow@gmail.com or leave a comment at flywithyourshadow.com. Or you can get in touch with me through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for Fly With Your Shadow. I thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show, and I really hope you'll join me next time on Fly With Your Shadow.
Oh, then you can tell me. You can tell me goodbye.